Hey fellow freelancers, Johnny5 Alive here, and welcome back to another Anthem video. Today we're going to be checking out a concept of the Trapper created by Mr. Stash, who is joined here with me. Say hello to everyone.
Hey everybody.
All right, so yeah, you created this really cool character and wanted to look at it further, elaborate on it further, so that's what we're going to be doing here today, everyone. So stay tuned and let's get into it. Alrighty, once again, I am joined by Mr. Stash, and he came up with this idea in our Discord. He linked it to me, and he threw it up on Reddit, and it's actually doing pretty good here. 556 upvotes. Congratulations, man.
Oh, thanks.
So you had a basic rough idea here, and I read through it, and I was like, this is really cool. Let's fine-tune it a little bit. So that's what we have done. We've broken it down a little bit further, but why don't you give everybody kind of like the backstory. Actually, before we do that, we got to give a shout out to Art Station. Fraggin Tan Guy created this for some game. You found that and you said, oh, that looks like a javelin. This will be a cool image to use. So we're basically just using that image as a placeholder. You were saying that you wanted to get something legitimate, right?
Yeah, the initial was I found something that kind of fit along the theme, and then I was like, in the future, if this does well, I'm gonna get a commission done so I can get a more professional look for the Trapper, because I've gotten a lot of people like, hey, he should have bows, he should have all this other stuff, but for right now, like, this will work until that's done, and then if it does well, which it has so far, if it gets more attention, then I'll probably go do that and it'll be a good time. Yeah,
so I helped you redefine it a little bit. We've had people on Reddit to share their ideas, so with a combination of that, we're taking it to the next level. You can take all those notes and maybe update this post later on, and get that concept art that you're looking to do and get a more refined version of this. So we want to kind of run you guys through all of the stuff. Let's start with the high concept of the Trapper and kind of what got you thinking about it.
Well, when Anthem was first launching, and I'm looking at all the different javelins, I kind of had an idea of having a more CC focused Trapper idea, like Trapper such as like a hunter, actually more like a ranger, but that name's already taken, so I went with Trapper. And
I like that name.
Oh yeah. And the entire idea was using traps to prime targets or do damage to targets and to set them up for your teams, but also being able to be elusive, and the idea of being able to turn invisible, which is not an Anthem currently. I thought that would be a really cool thing to separate it, that it can turn invisible, help its teammates get away from damage, because that's one of the big things when you're getting higher difficulties. Damage is going to kill you really quickly.
Right. So let's talk about some of your bullet points, what kind of changes we've made to them, and then we'll go into a full description, breakdown of all these abilities that we came up for them and improvements. So starting off with the description, the Trapper Javelin is focused around reconnaissance, utilizing stealth and a wide variety of traps and arrows to incapacitate foes, which you basically just described there. So moving into the ultimate, lethal arrow, this was the original concept, but we then defined it further. The Trapper throws a canister that leaks toxic gas across an area, priming targets inside, followed by a single explosion from his bow ignites that gas, causing a massive explosion. So while we like that idea, we wanted to tweak it a little bit. You asked me what I thought, and then I gave you some ideas, and then we ultimately came up with the combustion barrage. Fires up to 4 arrows that are basically canisters. They're arrow canisters, and you can choose 4 different areas, kind of like the storm where you get to click 4 different spots, and then those are deployed. They create gas clouds, and then he finishes it off with basically a multi barrage of fire arrows, and he ignites all 4 areas, and it's a detonator. So basically you can hit multiple areas of enemies, or you could just unleash all 4 clouds on one boss to do, a way stronger, 4 times the stronger explosion.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it's a pretty solid sounding ultimate when compared to the other classes. It seems kind of in lines with what the Storm is doing.
Yeah, and one of the big things that with the ultimate is I wanted to make sure that all of the javelins, they are all very unique, and I didn't want it just to be another interceptor or another ranger ability. It would make it completely different.
Gotcha. All right, next we're talking about the dodge, which was the elusive dodge. Upon dodging, the trapper is cloaked for 5 seconds. I thought that was really cool, but I immediately thought that seems a little bit strong, and the comments down below were also agreeing that it was very strong. So what we ended up doing was we moved the cloaking system over to his support systems, and for now he just is going to have a double dash. So in between the ranger and the interceptor, essentially. Okay, combo system. Originally you had it so it was a weakening combo. All enemies affected by a combo from the trapper are slowed for 75% for 10 seconds, while afflicted, their damage and accuracy are reduced by 50%. So do you want to talk on this a little bit?
Yeah, so like this kind of was going with the theme of being a trapper. Like if any animal or anything gets caught in a trap, they can't move and they're freaking out. And same idea would go for when you do your combo, the enemies would also be slowed dramatically, but also be kind of panicked, so their accuracy would go down and their damage would go down because they're not being efficient.
Right.
But as we were talking about it, we're like, wow, that is a cool idea. It doesn't fit.
It doesn't fit with the effectiveness of combos. If you look at all the way the other combos work on all the other characters, combos really only work if their shields are broken, which means most enemies are down to 50% or less health. So there needs to be some sort of immediate effect that feels good, whereas that might, it's like you're slowing them down, but they're already dead. Something felt, it's a little bit too slow burning. It doesn't give you instant gratification. Something needed to be changed there. So we started looking around at different ideas. One thing that came to my mind that we both really liked was the rearming trap idea. So basically, whenever a combo is detonated, the trapper's trapping systems cooldown are refreshed. Now, this doesn't really make too much sense because you guys don't really know about the trapping system yet, but to give you a quick idea, is one of his assault systems or whatever is trapping system. So you will be able to get the cooldown back immediately on after a combo, but it's not too overpowered because you're laying traps around, and now you're just laying twice as many traps, right? It gives you like a little, it's what the trapper should be doing, setting up traps. So I think that's what we ultimately agreed on, that it sounded cool, but it also seems powerful because you're getting cooldowns back, but only for one of your systems, so it's not like overly broken, but it can also increase your damage output, and that's what a combo should be about, damage.
Yeah, definitely. And that was kind of what the previous rendition really lacked, was lacking the damage, which, you know, everybody in Anthem, they really care about that damage.
Right. Okay, so melee ability, I really like this. Toxic knives. The trapper throws a fan of toxic-coated throwing knives that prime targets with acid. Did we make any changes to this?
We changed it to being a more of a single-target throwing knife versus a fan.
Right. Yes. And I think that is a better change because a fan of knives just seems a little bit hard to control, whereas just throwing a knife right at them, you get a coat, it primes them. It's really cool. I think a ranged melee ability, it's not really a melee ability, but you understand it, like your melee ability slot has now been replaced with a ranged ability, and that's very unique amongst all the characters. And right now, the ranger's the only one with a primer. Now you have a second one that primes and does it from a range, and his whole thing is about staying away from getting into the thick of things, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Very cool. All right, incapacitating systems. We've changed the names of these, so now that has become the trapping systems, and then the lethality systems we've changed into basically crossbow systems. So let's go from the top down. Starting with the trapping systems, it's an arm deploying mechanism similar to the Ranger's kind of like arm thingy, or the Colossus.
Just like a cannon. Like
yeah, right.
That deploys all the equipment.
So when deployed, it leaves a trap, basically, that can spring off when touched, or if you directly shoot the trap at something and it impacts them, it'll deploy instantly. So it's a trap gun, basically arm deploying trap gun. So the first one up, we have a ice trap, which is an ice primer. When deployed, freezes everything in a large areas and leaves a giant frozen area of effect on the ground, which can also be comboed, such as lightning effect hitting it. Basically, it'll create like a lightning puddle. And I thought that was a very unique idea because there's no character in the game that kind of leave effects on the ground. right?
Yeah, and one of the big things with traps and the trapper in general is area denial, where if you can keep your enemies away from you at a distance, then you're going to be doing your job be more effective. Where other classes like Colossus and the Interceptor and even Ranger, when I play it, is you're very in the whole fight the entire time. Where this one is farther back, you're using your abilities to keep things subdued.
Right, keep them at bay. Gotcha. All right, next up we have Tangled Vines, and that's an impact. It's an impact trap that entangles a large radius of enemies in a thorny net. Enemies receive piercing damage over time and bonus damage to armored units. So essentially you're trapping them in thorns and they receive damage from the thorns and they cannot move. But unlike the ice freezes them so they cannot shoot, they cannot do anything. This is a much longer duration. So they're going to be tangled up, they can't move. They can still fire back, but they're receiving damage and they're stuck in place for a much longer time. We didn't work out that time, but I think at least 10 seconds, right?
Yeah, and just like with any kind of status thing, if the enemy still has shields, they won't be affected by it, because the shield is always a gate for damage that you have to take care of before you can use abilities.
Right. Okay, next up we have Explosive Trap, which is a detonator. When enemies pass by, a proximity mine is deployed and seeks out and hits nearby enemies. So it's basically like think of like a mine that has a bunch of proximity mines in it. Let's say 5 or something, and any time an enemy passes by it, deploys another one. But then if you directly fire it at somebody's dome, it's basically a cluster bomb. Proximity mines go everywhere and seek out units, right? So it's basically like mini versions of the Seeking Glaive on the Interceptor. A bunch of little ones.
Yeah, and if you ever play Destiny and use the cluster grenade with the Hunter, it does a similar thing.
Yes, I definitely have done that. I played the Hunter in Destiny. All right, Inferno Trap. It's a fire primer. When deployed, creates a circular firewall, much like the Colossus's firewall mortar, but circular. So it's a firewall mortar trap, but it's a circle shape instead of a horizontal, kind of a rectangle shape like the Colossus leaves. So another very crowd control-y skill. You want to add something?
That one. Well, the biggest thing of that is being able to add that fire damage dot is pretty important, especially for teammates, because as more enemies walk into it, they'll get primed. They'll be ready for it.
Yep, definitely. So far, he's got some pretty good priming effects here. And then if you take into account his melee throwing star, that's a primer. He'll be priming with fire and venom, so he's definitely going to be a good primer out of the bunch. Next up, we have Venom Trap. Acid Primer. Has multiple charges. We put it as 3. Deploys similar to the Interceptor's Venom Bomb. So basically, it's 3 mini traps. You can go one here, one there, and they all deploy smaller little clouds. It's like a mini version of the Interceptor's Venom Bomb, but you have 3 of them. So you can kind of spread them out.
Yeah, and then once again, it's just all about that area denial, where you want to keep enemies as far as away, but also you can shoot it into just a group of enemies, and that's going to prime them all, which the acid proc will always reduce their resistances, so we can do more damage to them.
Right. All right, moving on, we have the Crossbow Systems. I'll let you kind of explain the concept there.
All right, so the Crossbow Systems, essentially, it's a arm-mounted crossbow that you shoot off. It's mounted just kind of like on the Colossus and Ranger. They all have it mounted there, but it's a crossbow. It shoots arrows that do different things, and each arrow we do have one primer, but most of them are for damage and detonation.
Right. So let's go into what these actually are, starting with my personal favorite, the Piercing Shot. Impact damage, has 5 charges, fires very quickly, and does bonus damage to weak points. So essentially, it's like the Interceptor's Plasma Stars. You can boop, shoot off 5 really quickly. They have short little cooldowns on each. They do bonus damage to weak points. It's just a straight up impact thing, not primer, not detonator, but it would feel very good, between your melee throwing star, shooting off a few of those with your arm, throwing some traps out. Just it would play very, very well. I enjoy the concept there.
I just want to say that, like, with that, being able to do critical damage is really important for crossbow skills in general, but being able to do rapid fire damage to foes would also increase viability for bosses because they don't get primed very much.
Gotcha. Yep, agree. All right, next up we have Slug Shot, Impact Detonator, 2 charges, does massive impact damage, knocking targets down, and you can also knock them out of the sky. You came up with this one. I'll let you explain a little bit further. I like the idea here.
Well, biggest thing that I wanted to do is have a skill for the Trapper to deal with airborne units, because one of my favorite things to do in the Ranger is using my Seeker Missile to knock them out of the sky. So if they're on the ground, they're not shooting at you. And that was the whole idea. And it also being a detonator just is also just another piece of the pie that you want to have for detonating your primers.
And to add to that, if you can kind of think about the fantasy of the character, let's just say there is a guy floating in the air, he's hovering, you get to deploy a trap underneath him with one hand, and then you aim at him with your slug shot, you knock him down into your trap, and kaboom. And I think that's one thing that just kind of came to mind that I didn't really mention here, that we didn't really think about, but I think if a trap is detonated, like landed on, it should do some sort of bonus damage or bonus effect. So when setting up like a trap on the ground and then hitting them with a slug shot, that in itself should be rewarded for cool play, rather than always just shooting traps at enemies like directly. There should be some sort of reward for baiting and switching, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
Very cool. All right, so Toxic Elixir. It's a primer, a heavy arrow armed with an elixir of venom, which shatters into a large cloud of acid on impact. So if you can imagine, it's like a vial of venom attached to an arrow, and basically does an acid cloud on hit. Pretty much very similar to the acid bomb from, or the venom bomb from the Interceptor.
Yeah, and once again, just like with all of the, like, I'm a big fan of the like venom acid procs, just because it helps you do more damage. But with this one specifically, it is also is the one of the only ones for the Trapper's crossbow system that also deals like a little bit of AoE damage as well, so it can prime multiple things at the same time.
Right. All right. Moving on, we have the multi-shot. If you got an archer character, you need a multi-shot. So it's an impact detonator that fires a fan of up to 12 piercing arrows that pass through enemies, and 2 charges on separate cooldowns. So in other words, you can shoot a fan of 10 and a fan of 10 and wait for them to come back, or you could do you could spread them out a little bit. But it's the idea of the Amazon multi-shot from Diablo 2 and the new...
The Witch Hunter.
Not the Witch Hunter, the Demon Hunter from Diablo 3.
Demon Hunter, that's what it's called. Demon Hunter.
So the classic multi-shot, you needed to have that in there, and obviously pierces through enemies, passes through them, and then obviously there'd be work versions making it even cooler, but you need a multi-shot on a Trapper style character.
Yeah, definitely. And my big idea with that also was that too many just single target abilities really hurt characters. Like, that's something I feel with the Ranger. That's why like, I love the grenades, being able to do damage with the grenades, because you just dish out more damage. This is kind of my idea on the other side, where your single target abilities should also have some AoE.
Yeah, I agree. All right, and last up for the Crossbow Systems is Explosive Bolt. Fires an explosive round that does massive area damage. Does bonus damage when stuck onto an enemy. So it's similar to the Ranger's Sticky Grenade.
Yep, and just like with that one, if you don't hit a target, it will still do the area of effect damage. But if you hit the target, it'll do a lot more damage, and probably Masterworks will do additional effects. But we're just focusing on the base skills.
Yeah, and the Trapper also needed something just explosive, because if you look at a lot of the characters, there are a lot of non-primer, non-detonator, explosive style abilities. So we thought we'd throw one in there to kind of make him equal. And fun fact, with all the abilities added up there are no lightning abilities. So the Trapper is going to be the one character in the game that doesn't have a lightning ability. So everybody's missing something on each javelin, so we thought we'd do the same thing here, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I think that it's important for every javelin to have a little bit of a weakness, and so not having lightning lets them lose out on a lot of stuns, but also that's something else that we were talking about is not going to have very much health, is wants to make sure that you want to stay away. Like, you don't want to have a whole bunch of health and be able to run in and do everything up close.
Yep. I mean, he has a lot of CC. It's just, I don't think stunning, electricity isn't considered stunning in this game, so we decided to leave it off the table here. It's more considered to be AoE damage, and then shield breaking damage. So it's effective at breaking shields, but the Trapper can also use things like Tangled Vines. With all his abilities there, he's very good at finishing off targets, but breaking through their shields is something he's definitely going to struggle with. But that's okay. Every character has their pros and cons. So
yeah.
All right. So we moving on, we still have support systems to cover. So let's start with the stealth field. The Trapper creates a stealth field that cloaks himself and any allies within a 10-meter radius. Cloaking field lasts 10 seconds or broken when using the ability. The Trapper does double damage with any ability used from stealth.
Yeah, and the big idea with this is I wanted to keep that stealth in there, but with that dodge, the elusive dodge I had before, it was just looked like it was just going to be too powerful. This way, it's on cooldown, so letting you cloak for a little bit longer, but also being able to pick people up while invisible and being able to just have enemies lose tracking on you is a really big bonus. That's why we wanted to keep it more of a support thing, has a cooldown, so it feels a lot better.
And speaking of which, we just talked over about his health being so low, he has something to get himself out of the thick of things, but he can also use it on someone that else's that it's about to die. Hey, I'm gonna die, I'm going down. You can see their health bar, throw out a stealth field and save them. Very cool. And then next up, we have the Caltrops. Fires a barrage of Caltrops over a wide area. All enemies caught within the Caltrops are slowed and take bonus damage. So think of it as a multi-targeting target beacon, but weaker. It's like the Interceptor's target beacon for AoE and weaker, which I think is a fair trade-off.
Yeah, and like the whole thing with Trapper, like marking targets, I really wanted to do that, but since it would feel very samey, keep it within that area denial CC. If people are getting slowed and they're in an area, that just opens up for more pain from other javelins.
Yeah, and Caltrops is just a fitting ability. It needs it in there. I think it could have fit into the Crossbow Systems or even the trapping systems, but these are all concepts. It could be further tuned. We can take these ideas. So with this whole video, we kind of want to hear your guys' thoughts. And, you know, what do you like about it? What would you change? What do you think we're missing here? And we'll give all that info to Mr. Stash here. He can further fine-tune it if he wants and update his Reddit post. I'll also have a link to the Reddit post down below, as well as the original artist that he used for just the concept to get things started. And hopefully we'll get an updated version of what we really want the Trapper to look like and that sort of thing. Anything else to add, Mr. Stash?
No, I just I'm really happy with how it's been turning out so far. And as if it gets a lot more attention, or even if Bioware decides to look at it more, then I'll move forward with getting things a lot more professionally, because I just threw it together in PowerPoint. I mean, nice lowball.
No, and here's the thing. I want to end things off going, I actually originally, like 2 weeks ago, I had the idea for, spoiler, an engineer class, and I have it all worked out in my mind. And I was thinking, okay, well, what if I do a video on this showcasing all the different abilities, break it all down? And you came forward with all this information, and I thought, all right, you've already got this one worked out. Let's work it out, like fully flesh it out, and get that out to you guys and see how you guys react and what you think of it. So if you like this video, you like these styles, this concept, I'll take that information and go work on my engineer class and come forward with a engineer character to show you guys my concept for that. And honestly, with the Trapper, I was thinking of a character that could fit into the game and what my overall concept for the engineer. The Trapper is something I didn't really think about, and so I was really excited by this, because after fleshing it out and looking at all the things that we came up with there and what you had already, I think it's a very unique class, and it doesn't overlap with any of my ideas with the engineer. So I was like, this is perfect, like two very unique characters to show off in a video, character concepts. So it's very fun. So thank you, Mr. Stash, for bringing this cool idea, sharing this idea with us and fleshing it out. Hopefully you guys like it. If you do, be sure to like, comment, and we'll talk about doing more in the future. Anything else to add, Stash?
No, I think we're good.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for joining me here today, Stash.
No problem.
And we'll see you guys in the next video. Bye now.
Bye.